Welcome, BCF. It's good to be together this morning. I'm glad that you're able to come together and watch this video. If you're not from BCF and you just happen to stumble across this video or someone sent you to it, welcome to you. We're glad that you could join us this morning. We're continuing as we're in these stay-at-home orders. We're continuing to love and to worship together. And I know that there's many people that are getting run down and feeling lonely and isolated. And I just wanted to encourage you that if you're feeling that way, just don't be afraid to reach out. Contact me, contact one of the elders, that we as a church, we want to be around one another. And early on I was saying this, and I haven't been saying as much as I should be, is just encouraging us as a church that we're reaching out to our brothers and sisters so that we can help people that are feeling that way. And so I just encourage you this morning that just this week, reach out to 3 people from our church family, maybe 2 people you know well, and then 1 person that you don't know so well, but I think that might just need to hear from someone. So I'd encourage you to do that, whether it's by phone or text or whatever form of communication that you use, but just encourage you to be doing that this week. And just that, if the Bible says that we are a body of Christ, and that if one part of the body suffers, the whole body suffers. Like, if you bang your thumb with a hammer, like, it hurts throughout your whole body can feel that. But by the same token, have you ever heard of someone or known someone that is not able to feel pain? And that's a really scary thing. But that's what it would be like if one of us is feeling pain and we don't let other people know about it. We are designed to be together as a body. And so if you're feeling lonely, if you're needing someone, just encourage you to reach out and just encourage all of us to persevere. Better times are coming, and we can look forward to that. And our hope ultimately is in Christ. And in his coming. And so, I just want to encourage you with that this morning. So that's like my little mini sermon before we really get into the sermon. One of the things with YouTube, having the video on YouTube, is I can watch and I can see the statistic. I can't see individually, so I don't know what you're doing, but I can see the percentage of people that watch past 5 minutes or past 10 minutes, or where people start to fall off. So this might be the only sermon some of you hear, but for the rest of you, we are going to continue in the book of Matthew this morning. So where we're at in the book of Matthew is Jesus is talking about his second coming. So we believe as Christians that Jesus died for us, that he rose from the dead, conquering our sin, conquering death, that had put him to the cross, and that he was on earth for 40 more days, and then he ascended, but he promised that he would return someday. And so we as Christians await that return eagerly. And that's what we've been talking about the last few weeks, is Jesus has been giving us instructions on how we live in this in-between time of his first time on earth and on his return. And so we're going to continue that today, and we have one last parable. So last week we saw a parable of these bridesmaids, and talked about what it meant to be prepared with the oil of obedience, being obedient to Jesus in this in-between time. And today we have another parable. I've had some help from my kids the last couple weeks, but this week I enlisted some different help to help us tell this parable. So go ahead and take it away.
For it will be like a man going on a journey, who called his servants, "Hey guys," and entrusted to them his property. To one he gave 5 talents,
Cha-ching.
to another 2,
Cha-ching.
to another 1,
Wow.
to each according to his ability. Then he went away.
So the master went away on his journey, and this is a pretty well-known parable of Jesus. If you've been in the church for a while, you've probably heard it before, but I think there's a little bit of confusion in the way we understand it, because of the way that it often ggets translated. And it's really this word talent that gets translated, and it doesn't really get translated because the Greek word is talent. But that's not especially helpful if you don't speak Greek. That's why you use a translation. So you don't know what a talent is. And it's even more confusing because we have a word in English that is talent, but it doesn't mean the same thing. And so we read the story and we think, oh, this one guy, he gets 5 talents. And so he's oh, he can jump really high, and he can, he's a good writer, and he can sing, and he can touch his nose with his tongue and burp his ABCs. And the next guy gets 2 talents. It's oh, he can ride a unicycle and juggle an axe or something. And then we make the story, well, don't bury your talents, use your talents, ride that unicycle, burp those ABCs for Jesus. And that's not exactly what this parable is about. Now, it can kind of apply that way, but that's not really what the main thrust of this parable was. And so what a talent was is a talent was like the largest measure of money that there was in the Greek language. Now there's a little bit of a debate about how much exactly it was, but if you look at it roughly and you convert it to days, you look at like how much it was compared to a day's wage and convert it to today's numbers, it would be about $1 million. And I like that actually because we use the word $1 million. We use it literally and we use it figuratively, and that's the way this word talent was used as well. So this week I'm going to encourage you, or not encourage you, I'm going to ask you. This is going to be a participatory message. I'm really missing being able to have the feedback. When we're together, I usually ask questions and get some replies. And so this week, I think it's going to be enhanced if you participate. And so what I want you to do is, in just a minute, I want you to go get a piece of paper. You can share that piece of paper for your whole group. Not everybody has to have their own piece of paper. And I'm going to reread this, just first little verses of this parable. I'm going to read it with the modern numbers. And what I want you to do is I want you to listen to it, and I want you to write down words that describe the master. Now, obviously, we almost all know that this master is talking about Jesus. So I don't want you to write down words that you know about Jesus, but just from this parable, not even from the whole parable, but from what I read, what words come to your mind that you would use to describe the master? So, let me read that. All right. For it will be like a man going on a journey who has called his servants and entrusted to them his property. To one, he gave $5 million, to another 2, to another 1, each according to his ability. And then he went away. All right, so get your paper, pause this video, take a couple minutes, talk with the people that you're watching this with. If you're with your family, if you're by yourself, it doesn't matter, but just write down a few words that you would use to describe the master so far in this parable. All right. So there's no right or wrong answer to this. Here's some words that I came up with. I thought that he was wealthy. Obviously, he's handing out large sums of cash. He's generous in that he's entrusting his servants with it. He's trusting to his servants. He's fair. He gives to each according to his ability. And then I said he's audacious. Now, I have to admit that I wanted to say he was like reckless, but like in a good way. Like he's willing to risk his money. But and then I was like bold, but I was trying to come up with the right word. And then I used a thesaurus. And I saw the word audacious, and I think that's what I want. And so then I had to look up for sure that I had to make sure I knew what audacious meant. And it said intrepidly daring or recklessly bold. And I was like, yes, that's what this guy is he's recklessly bold. He's willing to give his servants, to take a risk on his servants, to entrust these large sums of money to them, and to take a risk with them. And so I really liked that word. So, all right. So those are some words that we have to describe the master. All right. With that in mind, I want to watch what happens when the master goes away.
He who had received the 5 talents went at once and traded with them, and he made 5 talents more. Ooh. So also, he who had the 2 talents made 2 talents more.
All right.
But he who had received the 1 talent went and dug in the ground and hid his master's money.
All right, so while the master is away, what are the first 2 servants doing? They're working. They're out and about. They take the master's money that he's entrusted to them, and they go out and they work to grow it. And so here we have our first lesson about what are we supposed to be doing in this in-between time? What are we supposed to be doing while we await the return of Jesus? And the first thing that we see is that we work for God's kingdom while we wait Jesus' return. We work for God's kingdom while we await Jesus' return. Right? Being a Christian is not solely about like an inward focus, like we're supposed to withdraw and we're supposed to just really dive into scripture and pray and just kind of be by ourselves and isolate from the world and grow up in Christ. Being a Christian is yes, prayer and Bible study, those things are a part of it, but those things prepare us to be able to go out to work and to serve the world around us. We are called to go out and work for God's kingdom. And what does it mean to work for God's kingdom? Does that mean, it doesn't mean that we're all supposed to be on staff at a church or a nonprofit. It doesn't mean that your vocation has to be ministry. In fact, the idea that I am a minister and you're not because I'm paid staff at a church is just totally foreign to the New Testament. In the New Testament, all Christians are ministers. In fact, the word minister comes from the word to serve. If you are a believer, you are a servant of Christ. You are a minister for God's kingdom. And we might have different amounts, different realms, different spaces entrusted to us, but we all have something entrusted to us, and we are all called to go out and work. And so it doesn't matter if you're a teacher or a salesman or a housewife or you're unemployed, you are a worker for God's kingdom, and that can happen in your vocation or outside of your vocation. In fact, it should be happening both places. We are supposed to be ministering for the gospel always, working for the gospel always, being a hard worker like what we see in these first two servants here. So what does that mean? Like, what are we supposed to be doing? And it's interesting in this parable, if you look at the $5 million man, first of all, like the master, he didn't give the guys any instructions at all. He's like, here's $5 million, you guys you kids go have fun, right? But immediately, and then the word immediate is right there in the Bible. Immediately, the $5 million man, he goes out and he starts trading. He starts making a profit. Well, how does he know to do this? Well, you read later in the parable that the master is a very successful man. It says that he's able to raise things up where he didn't plant anything. And so what I understand from this parable is, how does the $5 million man and the $2 million man know what to do? Is that they've been watching the master. They know what the master does. They see what he's done, and they've copied him. They're doing what he did. And so what does it mean for us to work and to serve in God's kingdom is that we as the church are supposed to be doing what our master did. Jesus loved the lowly and the despised. We are supposed to love the lowly and despised. Jesus helped people and met their physical needs, brought healing and prayed for healing for them. We're supposed to meet people's physical needs. We're supposed to bring healing, pray for healing for them. Jesus proclaimed the good news of God's kingdom. We as the church are supposed to proclaim the good news of God's kingdom. He stood up to false religion and to hypocrisy. He loved sacrificially. These are the things that we are supposed to be doing. We are supposed to be watching our master, and while he's away, we're supposed to be copying and emulating the things that he does. That is how we serve. That is how we work for God's kingdom. So, I encourage you, look at your life. How are you working for God's kingdom? What are you doing to serve? Are you eagerly rushing out like the man who was entrusted with $5 million? Now, you might be entrusted with $5 million. You might be entrusted with $2 million. You might be entrusted with $20. But how are you using what was entrusted to you? And I don't mean this financially. In fact, I think that that's why like these extravagantly large numbers are used. Part of the reason, anyway, we'll get to another part later, but part of the reason those extravagantly large numbers are used is because this isn't supposed to be just about money, though how we use our finances does impact how we serve the kingdom, but it's about so much more than finances, right? How are you doing the things that Jesus did in his life? And not just the things that affect you personally. I mean, it's easy. Well, it's not easy to like forgive people, but it's it's easy to try to do those things, and that's kind of what we talked about last week in the obedience. But how are you doing the things that in the world around us? How are you working to love the lowly? How are you working to proclaim the good news of God's kingdom? How are you working to serve and minister for God's kingdom? Are you being a good and faithful servant? Are you going out and investing what God has entrusted with you and getting a return on it? Or are you being like the other servant that we saw? The one who went out and buried his talent. Are you hiding what God has entrusted to you? Because if you find yourself in that place, then you're not working for God's kingdom. And we'll see what happens when the master returns.
Now, after a long time, the master of those servants came and settled accounts with them. And he who had received the 5 talents came forward, bringing 5 talents more, saying,
Master, you delivered to me 5 talents. Here, I have made 5 talents more.
His master said to him,
Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little. I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master.
And he also, who had the 2 talents, came forward, saying,
Master, you delivered to me 2 talents. Here, I've made 2 talents more.
His master said to him,
Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little. I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master.
So the master returns and he rewards the first 2 servants. Now, I want you to take out your papers again. I'm going to reread this passage we just read, or we just saw the video for. And after I get done reading, I want you once again to pause the video and write down words to describe the master. Now, after a long time, the master of the servants came and settled accounts with them. And he who had received the 5 million came forward, bringing 5 million more, saying, Master, you delivered to me $5 million here. I have made 5 million more. And his master said to him, Well done, good and faithful servant. You've been faithful over a little. I'll set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. And he also who had made the 2 million came forward and said, Master, you delivered to me $2 million. Here, I've made 2 million more. And his master said to him, Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little. I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. All right, so go ahead and pause the video, talk with the people you're watching this with, and write down what are some words that you would use to describe the master from this little section of the parable. All right, so when I watch it, or when I read it, the things that come to my mind is that he's joyful, like he delights in just hearing his servants delight, and he shares in their excitement. He's kind to his servants. He's loving to his servants, that he's participating with them. And why do I say that? Well, all right, what do I have here? A penny. And you can't even tell it, but it's a Canadian penny, right? How many of you would bend over to pick this up? Not many of us, right? All right, how about, here we have a quarter. Who would bend over to pick up a quarter if you're passing it on the street? Okay. How about $1 bill? Would you bend over to pick up a $1 bill? How about a $10 bill? So each of us probably answered that question differently. And what's interesting is that most of us probably wouldn't bend over to pick up a penny. I wouldn't bend over to pick up a penny. But there's been times that my kids, I've been with my kids, and they're probably actually getting to the age, my older ones anyway, that they might not even bend over to pick up a penny, but they might still. But I've been with my kids when they're younger, and they find a penny, and they're like, Dad, look at what I found. This is amazing. And they get so excited. And my response isn't, oh, yeah, it's just a penny. My response is, whoa, that's so exciting. That's so cool. I participate in that joy with them, even though to me, a penny has almost no value, especially if they found this penny, the Canadian penny, it literally has no value, right? But that is how the master acts, is that he shares in the joy of his servants, and this money to him, I don't think means very much as far as a value of money, right? And why do I say that? Is, well, there's 2 things. One is that the first thing is that this is all his money, right? It's not like the servants made $5 million for themselves. Like, this is all his money. They used his money. They started with his money, and it all belongs to him. It's not theirs. But secondly is, the $5 million to him is like a penny to us, right? And why do I say that? Well, what does he say to them? You've been faithful with a little. You've been faithful with a little. Now, most of us would not call $5 million just a little, right? Most of us in our lifetime will never have control over $5 million. But to this master, he's like, that's a little. That's just a little. And yet, he's excited to celebrate. Like, he could just be the servant's like, oh, aren't you cute? You think that little $5 million, that $2 million you made, yeah, that's nothing, that's nothing. He could be like that, but instead he says, well done. I'm so excited for you. Way to go, buddy. Oh, come and celebrate with me. And so what we see in this parable is that God is excited to partner with us, right? This is his money. This is his things that he's entrusted us with. And he said, come participate with me. And he's excited as we work for him. And God doesn't need us, right? God doesn't need us to accomplish what he needs to accomplish. He can accomplish these things on our own. And yet he says, join with me, partner with me. He delights in it. He says, enter into the joy that I feel. And I truly think that this isn't just something we look forward to at Jesus' return, but that we experience joy as we serve God now. The greatest joys that I've experienced in my life, I've done some fun things. I've traveled to some cool places. I've done some exciting things in my life. But the greatest joys that I've experienced in my life is not from the stuff I've had, not from the places I've gone, but it's when I have served the Master well. And when I've gotten to share in his joy, when I've seen people turn their lives to his, when I've seen people follow him and choose to serve him, when I've seen strongholds and areas of people's lives broken down by the good news of the gospel that I've been able to share or communicate or teach, that is the greatest joys that I have experienced in my life. And the truth is, God didn't need me for any of those things. And yet he said, here, Justin, here's a couple million. You go take this. Let's see what you can do with it. And then he partnered with me. And as this Holy Spirit worked through me in the lives of others, he said, enter into this joy. Well done, good and faithful servant. Now, there's something else we see from this section of the parable. And we see that, both the man who made $5 million and the man who made $2 million, that they received the exact same reward. It's not like the guy who made $5 million, that God's like, well, you did so much better, I'm going to really reward you. And the other guy, well, you did pretty good, but you could just catch up. We're going to raise that monthly quota for you a little bit, right? And what we see from this is that God is more concerned with our faithfulness of service than our productivity. God is more concerned with our faithfulness of service than our productivity. In other words, he's more concerned that we be faithful to what he's called us to than what we get back. Right? We can get so worried. Am I doing good enough, God? Am I doing enough? And we can compare ourselves to others and say, well, look at that guy. He's doing so much more, right? Like Ravi Zacharias just passed away, an amazing man of faith, had a $5 million ministry, maybe literally. And we can look at that and say, well, I'm nothing compared to that. But that's not what God measures us on. He doesn't measure like how good are you compared to a Ravi Zacharias. He says, how faithful are you to what I've called you to? Right? Maybe all God's called you to is loving your kids and your neighbors around you and serving cookies at church. Maybe God's called you to start a ministry. Maybe he's called you to something big, to welcome kids into your home. Maybe he's wanting you to actually go and serve in vocational ministry. Whatever it is that God has called us to, whether it seems big or little to us, it's not important. Our value isn't judged on the size of our ministry, the things that we do. Our value is judged on our faithfulness to the one who's called us. Do we trust him? Are we willing to obey him? Are we willing to step out in faith and to work hard no matter what the results are, just because he has called us to do it? Are we willing to be obedient to the work of service to which he has called us? Because when we are, that is when we get to experience the joy of our master. Sadly, there's one man who doesn't get to experience that in this story, and let's see what happens to him.
He also, who had received the 1 talent, came forward, saying,
Master, I know you to be a hard man, reaping where you did not sow, and gathering where you scattered no seed. So I was afraid, and I went and hid your talent in the ground. Here, you have what is yours.
But his master answered him,
You wicked and slothful servant, you knew that I reap where I have not sown and gather where I scattered no seed. Then you ought to have invested my money with the bankers, and at my coming I should have received what was my own with interest. So take the talent from him and give it to him who has 10 talents. For everyone who has will more be given, and he will have an abundance. But for the one who has not, even what he has will be taken away. and cast the worthless servant into the outer darkness.
Huh?
And in that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth.
All right, so thank you again, Rasmussen family, for making that. Love that video. And I know it was fun. I liked the way they did the ending, but I also want to keep in mind that this is a serious thing as well, right? And some of you are probably bothered by this, right? That this servant, he just seemed to lack a little bit of confidence, and the master seemed pretty harsh with him. And so let's examine that a little. So first off is we can't take this parable out of the context of the book of Matthew. And when we look at Jesus, like throughout the book of Matthew, has he been someone that if someone is weak or lowly or lacking confidence, that he's just going to go and trample them down and smash them down? No, Jesus is a defender of the weak. Right? He lifts up the lowly. He calls out those who have worldly power and influence. And there's a big theme throughout the gospel of the first will be last and the last will be first. And so I don't think that this is a case of Jesus just taking someone who's lacking confidence because they've had a hard life or whatever, and he's just trampling them down, right? In this parable, we've seen that the master is wise, that he loves his servants, that he assigns what they're capable of accordingly. And so he has not given the servant a task that he is incapable of doing. Right? And it's not just like that the man tries and he fails, but the man just refuses to try. And I think there's a lesson in this. I said in the last point is that we are judged according to our faithfulness of service and not according to our results, but that doesn't mean give us an excuse to not do something that God has called us to do. If God calls you to do something, do it. Do it without fear. Not feeling that you have to be the best at whatever it is or compare yourself to somebody else, but do it faithfully in service to the master. Right? I think God often calls us to things that where we feel, I'm not good enough. I can't do that. I'm not strong enough. I'm not whatever enough. And instead of trying and maybe failing, we just don't try at all. God can use our failure. God can use our mistakes. God can help us to learn and grow from those. But he can't help us to grow if we just refuse to obey, refuse to serve the master. And honestly, when we say to him, I'm too weak, I'm not good enough, what we're really saying is, Master, you're not good enough. Because when we recognize that it all depends on him, then we have to realize that we're saying, Jesus, you're not big enough to overcome my weakness. You're not strong enough to overcome your weakness. Your strength isn't enough to overcome where I might fail. What looks like a lack of confidence in ourselves really becomes a lack of confidence in the master. So, don't bury it. Don't hide. Don't disobey when God has called you to do something. But there's more to this man than just his lack of willingness to work. Look what he says to the master. His first words were, I knew you were a hard man. All right, so this was the point of this paper. I want you to look back over your papers. I'm guessing not one person wrote down that from this parable that this master is a hard man. In fact, quite the opposite was conveyed by the way that he treated his servants. And what you come to realize as you look at the words of this servant here is that the master, that he does not really understand or know who the master is at all. That he has a false representation of what the master is. And so what this teaches us is that to serve Jesus, we have to know him. To serve Jesus, we have to know him. Right? It's not really clear why the servant has this false idea of who the master is, but for whatever reason, he does. I don't know if you've had this experience in your life of someone has a false impression of you or something in their head about you and they just can't get it out. I remember when we were working with youth, there was this one parent, it wasn't anybody in the church, it was a friend outside the church, so I can talk about it okay, I think. But there's this one parent that for some reason just didn't like me and said I was irresponsible and immature. And it was just frustrating because no matter what I did, like I tried to act so professional when I talked to her. I tried to do whatever I could to like convey like, no, that's not who I am. Maybe I had a bad moment or something you saw, but whatever it was, I got in that got in her head and she could not get it out of it. And it was so frustrating to me that her daughter was like missing out on things because of this impression that she had of me. Right? And that is the experience that this guy has with the masters, is that for some reason he thinks the master's this hard, cruel man, and he can't get it out of his head. And so his experiences and his thinking about the master lead him, instead of experiencing the joy of his master that the other servants get to experience, he instead experiences the fear of his master. Now, last week I talked and I said that part of what it means to live wisely is to fear God. You know, Proverbs says that fearing God is the beginning of wisdom, and that's true. And last week I talked about what that means. Is it means that we recognize who God is and his power and his significance, and who we are and our weakness and insignificance. And that we have an appropriate understanding of those things so that we're not elevating ourselves to a position of God. And yet, I don't think that biblically we can just remain in that place of fear. Right? Because the message of the gospel is that punishment that we deserve in our unrighteousness compared to his righteousness, that in our weakness and his power, that all that we deserve, Jesus took on himself on the cross. And so when we trust in him, he has taken that from us. And so we don't remain in that place of fear. We have to begin there to really understand the gift that was given in Jesus. To begin wisdom, we have to understand that and fear God, but we don't remain in that place. 1 John says, we know how much God loves us, and we have put our trust in his love. God is love, and all who live in love live in God, and God lives in them. And as we live in God, our love grows more perfect. And so we will not be afraid on the day of judgment, but we can face him with confidence because we live like Jesus here in this world. And this is the key verse here. Such love has no fear, because perfect love expels all fear. If we are afraid, it is for fear of punishment. And this shows that we have not fully experienced his perfect love. Right? This servant here, he lives in fear of the master. And there's not good reason to. This master longs to partner with him, longs to participate with him, has given him a task that he's capable of, wants to celebrate and experience the joy with him. And yet this guy just can't get it out of his mind that this master is harsh. This master wants to hurt him. This master is someone to be feared. And many people live that way towards God. That God's always out to get him. That when no matter what they do, he's looking to punish them. Like, you know, if they look the wrong way, do the wrong thing, that God is out to get them. And what the message of the gospel is that Jesus has taken that punishment, taken that on himself, and so that we can walk confidently before God. We move from this place of fear to friendship, to relationship. We learn to know our master better. And what about this punishment? You know, is it overly harsh? And this punishment that the final servant receives. And I think it's interesting. You know, a couple weeks ago, we saw another punishment that seemed quite harsh. There was a man that was cut in two, and another servant of another master. And we thought, but when we looked at it, we saw what the issue was, is that was a duplicitous man, that he was a hypocrite, that he was living as two people. And so he justly received the punishment of being cut in two. When we look at this parable, when we look at the rewards of the people, of the good servants, we see something interesting, right? And this, I could go on about this one. I wish I had more time, actually, because, you know, we have this notion that someday we're going to go to heaven after we die, and it's going to be, you know, if you like golf, it's going to be the best golf courses there are, and that's what you're going to do for all eternity, just play golf or whatever it is that you like to do, because heaven is all about you. But that's not what biblically teaches. In fact, look at the reward for these servants. So these servants, they're faithful, and God doesn't say, well done, good and faithful servant, now come kick back and you know, and go enjoy your golf game. He says, well done, you've been faithful with a little bit, now I'm going to give you so much more to do. Right? Our eternity will be joyful, full of the joy of the master, but I don't think it's going to be just about our happiness or contentment. Anyway, that's another sidetrack. The point of it is that these servants receive a reward based on how they lived, based on what they did. All right, well, now let's look at this guy's punishment. What is his punishment? Is he's cast into outer darkness. And why is he cast in outer darkness? Because he lived his life in a willful choice of darkness towards who the master was. He could have known, he could have experienced if he would have let his mind. I'm sure that the implication of the parable that this, the master represents Jesus, the implication is that the master tried to show him love, tried to show him his true character, and that this servant willfully and defiantly chose to remain in darkness. And so the master so honors his choice that he's cast into a place of outer darkness. And what I think we see in the rewards of all these parables is that yes, God is sovereign, but in his sovereignty he has chose to honor that choice that we have made. And this parable reminds us to take that seriously, to think through what are the choices you are making with your life. Are you choosing to really know who your master is, what he's up to, what he desires of you? Are you choosing to obey him, choosing to work eagerly and confidently? Are you choosing to when you feel insecure about yourself, to say, it's okay because I trust in him? Are you choosing to enter into the joy of your master? Or are you turning your back? Are you saying he's too harsh, he's too unkind, I can't work for him, or I won't work for him, or I'm not good enough, and really hiding behind that I don't trust you to work through me? Because whatever choices it is that you make, he will honor. Whether it's to trust and serve and enter into the joy, or to reject it and reside in darkness. But that is not his desire, right? God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him will not perish, will not dwell in darkness, will have the light of life. God, we thank you so much for your love for us. We thank you that you are a good and loving God, a good and loving master, and that we can serve you eagerly and faithfully. We thank you that you loved us, that you served us even though you didn't have to, and you allowed yourself to experience what we deserve on the cross. We take this bread and we say, thank you, Master. Thank you, Jesus. And we say, thank you for allowing your blood to be poured out. Thank you that you loved us to the point of death. We take this cup and we say, help us to love and serve like you did. And so, God, I just pray this morning, God, I pray that we would learn from your example. That in the way that you loved this world, that you cared for this world, the way that you proclaimed the kingdom, that we would be passionate about those things as well. That our lives would not just be about finding our own happiness, but it would be about serving our master, and that we would, as we do that, experience and enter into the joy of our master. God, I pray for those this morning who have darkness in their minds around you, who have thoughts about you that just aren't true, that hold them back from serving you and experiencing you. God, may you just lift those things away. May they turn and trust in you and serve you with their whole lives. And may you lead us. And may we eagerly await the day when we get to hear from you. Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with little. I will put you in charge of much. Enter into the joy of your master. In Jesus' name, amen. Go in peace.